Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button, and I'm a granite sculptor. And welcome to video number 157 of the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. All right, I spent day yesterday and foregoed the video, whatever that word is, skip doing any video, and getting our leg together pretty well. Take a look in terms of critical stuff. See if I can point from here. If you notice, this line is more horizontal than over here on the model. See how that goes? It sweeps up a little more dramatically, and this is more flat. Okay, it's real simple. Let me hang the camera up and I'll show you a little more about what I'm trying to explain. This goes back into shop-made tools, things that you do. I don't remember if I showed you my big bevel square or not, but this is, you know, one end of a carpenter square that didn't get made into a compass, okay? And I just ran it on my table saw, cut a strip. You can do all that by hand if you want. Put a nut in there, and it'll seat in just like a regular, you know, store-bought one. But then you can pull it out. Because we've got a center line on here, I'm going to turn this around so that we can put it along the center line and get our approximate angle right there. And just snug it up. Then we can check this along, you know, where this center line is here. And you can see how much has to come on. This line would potentially go clear up here, okay? I said potentially. Because of how this is and this is stretched, this is just a little bit higher on here than it is on this model. And I can double check and then that much and then about to there. So see, it's pretty close, just doing a quick rough measurement off that point on our knee. It's not far away. But before we cut this line way down, we have to make sure that we've got enough room for all of this. And this will change that. I've still got to take some mass off here on the back side of her calf. I don't know how well that shows, but this still needs to come off in here just a little bit. And then hopefully you can see, I've been working this fold back. I've been going slightly concave here to try to accentuate this curve. And then it's really tedious down here on the bottom. Pull the camera over just a little bit more so y'all can see. It's really important to get these areas behind cleaned up really well. This curves over and you'll look at it in the front and think, yeah, nobody's ever going to notice that. They will, okay? And so you end up doing a lot of time. You have to take your tool. Remember I talked about the bevel on your tool? You know, if the bevel is too steep, you know, say for instance, well, if the bevel's too steep to go to your edge, and say for instance that, you know, where it transitions to my hand is the corner of the bevel. When you're carving, you'll rub on the end of the bevel and ramp this up in the air. It won't make contact because you can only go on at a certain angle. When you've got limited clearance, you may have to draw the bevel on your chisel until it's a lot steeper. Instead of it being like this, it may have to be like this. And so you draw that back. It may even be necessary to offset it and have your bevel on one side only. And I usually don't single bevel a big tool like this. Sometimes I will. You got to be able to flatten one side completely, and that may not be feasible. And on a big one like this, it can cause weakness issues if you do too much of it. So, but that can give you even more clearance because you'll have essentially no bevel there to catch anything. I usually do that with just a plain 5/8 chisel instead of a, I get a brand new one that's nice and long, and I'll just bevel it to one side and keep the back dress flat, and then you can reach really well. But you want your back sides to be as nice as the front, because what will end up happening is, as this is in the cemetery, and you're not going to see this, okay? As this is in the cemetery, it's going to start getting dirty, and anything that's got roughness to it, dirt is going to accrue in there, stuff is going to grow in there more readily, and it's going to end up showing it up really fast. And when somebody comes up and she looks all nice and smooth, and they see just around the edge it's all rough and crooked, that's really not good. I'm not a, you can carve wet, you can work wet. Jim in the studio used to do all his stone work with a drizzle of water to keep his dust down. That's just, he didn't have suction. He worked across on the opposite wall, and there wasn't any suction over there, and so he put up a plastic tent, and he did all his, most of it was grinding, but that's how he managed his dust, was with water. And that's what he did. That's not what I do. But one of the benefits, we do use water a little bit in the finishing, and I'll explain that to you with some of the detail work. But when you're washing the stone or doing anything with the stone, the water will help you see imperfections. If there's a rough spot, like there's some tool marks where there shouldn't be, you can wet a stone and look at it, and the water will help make them more obvious. It's really not something that I would do on here because I understand how to do this, and that's not what I need. But if I was cleaning this at the end and I saw that there was a rough spot where there shouldn't be, I'd go in and clean it up. As you're working your folds, it's important to remember that you want to demonstrate, you want to help people understand that the drapery is very consistent, okay? And if you have a tight fold here and a tight fold here, that's probably going to be a very accurate representation of how thick or thin the fabric actually is. And so as you do your other folds, remember to keep them balanced, because if you have, these are supposed to be more relaxed, and I'll tighten these edges up as we undercut this to make it look more like these other, this will probably be, because this is this is under the least amount of tension of all these folds, but we're going to thin this up, we're going to not thin these up. This is going to be thinned up a little bit. We want to make sure that it looks like the fabric is continuous and consistent in terms of thickness and how we represent that. If we go to great lengths, if I put a lot of effort into carving this leg very, I don't even know what the right word to say. If I try to make it look too transparent, if I try to make it look too much like the fabric simply isn't there, it's as thin as a piece of paper, you get into the risque territory of at least with this genre, this type of work. You want it to look like there's enough fabric there so that there's a certain amount of modesty involved with the figure, because we don't want to see anatomical detail that would be inappropriate for an angel, okay? And this isn't meant to be a bare-breasted angel that's, fighting in the war on the front line like Liberty with, one of her whatever's hanging out, and she's out there and she doesn't care because she's fighting. Okay, that's great, but that needs to be done in a certain context. This is not that context, okay? This is not where that is appropriate. This is not about vulnerability or it's not supposed to be titillating at all. So you have to moderate the thickness of your fabric so that it looks appropriate, but you also have to make sure that you make it look consistent so that you don't have big wonky thick folds where there shouldn't be and thin folds where there shouldn't be. They should work together and communicate a consistent thickness. So but I'm gonna get back to work, but if we end up, you know, I got to study this upper area some. But if this is what we need to do to go up to here to pull that's going to change how long this is, because it's going to go from being well, I got to go backwards, being from this to this. It's going to make her look longer. Okay, so just going to go back to scraping and cutting, and I'll be back in a little bit. Went ahead and did some looking. You know, I showed you with the bevel square, this line. This dot, this point that we shot here on the model is relevant to the drapery off the knee, not to this fold. So this approximation that I got, it was just working stone on. This one is right on that line. And so I went ahead and I've got a rough line drawn in here. I'm going to work that to tune this, and then this has a split here, so it goes roughly there, and then this fold goes up and, you know, roughly bisects and gets up into this area. So I'm going to start working these back, try to make sure that I squeeze, because this has got to be a tall crease right in here that's sticking out. I don't know if I can turn and show on the model. See this right here? That point should be around approximately this point right here. Close to there. That's where that point's supposed to be. And this other one, way up top, I'm not sure if the camera will show it. This point here. So I'm gonna go ahead and work these in and start doing these folds later. Now remember, this is supposed to be her abdomen, her groin. So this should have a little bit of volume, a little bit of pooch to it. That's the way you usually draw them. They're thrusting that pelvis forward. It should be rotated forward as she's stepping forward. So we don't want to make it look like she's hunkered, stretched back in. So start working on that. And I wear the mask a lot when I'm moving around a lot. If I get in one place, it's not as critical because I can get the suction right on that area. But if I'm traveling a big area, but now we got her leg put together in a big way, I want to leave some of the volume down here until we turn this. I got to fold here because we have that deep spot. So I got to work on, because this line would typically go over a little bit more to meet there. So I got to develop some tension so that make these folds make sense. And we may end up splitting this one where they fork up here and then developing more contour there. So start working on it. That's like I said, you can fake a curve all day long. You know, when you start trying to fake straight lines and flat surface square edges, you just can't. So let's get carved. As you're going to have to start. You know, I talk about not diving into the pretty part first, but at some point when you've got your landmarks together, you're going to have to start carving. Okay, you're going to have to start committing and doing things that can't be undone, things that will ruin the job if you screw it up. And I mean ruin it. I don't mean, wow, she'll be okay. I'm talking about, you know, there's no stone there for her ear, or her hand breaks off, or something like that. And, you know, I've never had a huge catastrophic thing. I have, you know, little edges of folds or a piece of a lip or something. I've never had a big piece pop off. You know, my bucket full of mistakes with big things are more that he said, no, cut that off. That's not where it needs to be. You got to move it. So he saw it right off. So, but we've already committed this nice contour, this nice fold. Okay, we've already committed the bulk of this fold, you know, down here. As I move into finishing this line, this edge, this fold, this is what I'm talking about when I say you got to be careful not to abuse the stone, because all of this work that you've done, you can ruin it right here by knocking a big chunk out. And that's why it's so critical to not impart energy to start a check, to cuddle. I say, oh, I'm way in the beginning. I'll deal with that later. No, you want to do your very best all the way to avoid any kind of, and catastrophic isn't the right word. You'll have incidental stuff that happens along the way that you won't think about until you're, you know, undercutting this, and all of a sudden this all falls off because you put a check in. Okay, you didn't go in here and deliberately do it. I get that. I didn't deliberately go in to have anything chip or break or fail when I was learning, or when I'm carving right now. But it happens, and so your goal is, first of all, to not let it happen, and second of all is that you've got some kind of escape strategy to deal with it if it does. And the problem is that sometimes when you've got a lot of stone taken off, there is no escape strategy. You start undercutting something, you're done. You can't just recover it. You can't sink it or shift it. You know, we've already got commitments here. We can't push this over another inch or more and pick up this material. So, you know, as a chef, you cook and you have a pretty pan, and the pan kind of scorches. That's all brown and it looks cool and everything, and it scorches. You set aside, get another pan, keep cooking, whatever. And you know, your chef kind of lets you do it because you're young and you're stupid. You don't understand that that pan, the brown in that pan, is as critical to the success of that plating as the actual center of the plate and the protein on that you've been sauteing or browning or breading or whatever you're doing, grilling. You want to preserve that fond, that brown, because that's going to be your pan sauce, and that's all your flavor. You can't, it's hard to recreate that flavor on the fly and have it match the dish. And so we're at the point now to where this is becoming really critical. I'm lowering this with a 2-blade, and I'll do a little bit with probably with a narrow bush chisel and a scraper, you know, turned on a bias, and get my flat really nice. And then I'm just going to start working my edge up. I'm not going to just go in here and cut a line, because that's when it can cause a problem. I'm going to slowly work my edge off. I'm going to try to bevel it to get my edge, and I'll start with my line over here and bevel in, but I got to be careful because I got another fold right there, so I can't sink it way deep. That's why I talked about working on intersections, around features, doing the flesh and the material around the features, so that you don't cut all this off. It looks great. Oh God, now I don't have any stone for that next fold. So I've got to come together in the right, you know, the right relationship. So I'll see if I can get a little bit of this, but I'm going to keep working. If you've got a low spot that, I don't know, maybe problematic, something you notice, you can always take your red pencil and put it in that low spot, and then you'll know it's still there or it's gone, okay? Because we have to make sure we want this edge to be in line with this, but we also need to be in the right height or altitude with it, you know, compared to the ground. We got to have it together in all these different dimensions. So when we look at it from the side, this line still goes good, because there's lots of times when you have a detail that looks buggered up, but it, on its face value, it looks fine. If you turn around and look at it at the side or look up, You know, like a lot of times you look up at a bas relief that you're carving, you way down and look right straight up like you're looking up their nose, and you'll see that the eyes are one's forward and one's back, or there's some part of the face that's rotated and it shouldn't be compared to the rest of the skull, and that's your noise. So, all right, back to Paul. Okay, I don't really want to draw on it too much because I've already got it cleared off. But this line, about here, that works really well with that. That gives it that look that I want, okay? I can always go over a little bit more if I need to. It's a lot easier than trying to bring it back this way. My point's right here. This is, you know, maybe a 1/4 inch past that point. So I got that there for an edge. Now, on this side, on the model, it scoops. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to isolate it. I'm going to take my round chisels, my wide and my regular 5/8 and my scraper. I'm going to cove them. I'm going to start to develop this fold, this detail. I'm going to go ahead and evacuate a little bit on this side of it and start to curve that to preserve that mass. Because I'm not into it yet, but I'm close. And so then when I go up further here, I'll have a little bit of a cup, and I can curve this in, and I can keep this and make this really tall. And these things about preserving volume, they really work at the end. I can't show you what it looks like if I do it wrong, okay? Because I can't afford to carve this wrong and say, see, this is a common mistake that happens when you do. Now we can do that in clay, but boy, this has got to be right on the money. So I'm gonna go over and sharpen these rounds, and then I'm also going to take and I'm going to start putting just a little bit of a relief over here. To try to get that edge close so I can bevel with like my bush chisel, go back and forth and start that and just have a line there on the stone, just a shadow line, a break, so I can look at it, move my light. You know, moving your light will really show you a lot, and you'll be able to see where that line is and get it really fine-tuned. And we've got to study it. I've also got to come back over here and look from the side to make sure that it's got the right curve in and out, okay? So everything all comes together at once. It's hard to explain it, but that's the way it works. I'm going to sharpen some tools. I want to see if y'all can see this. You see how that made such a nice cove right there? Okay, just a second ago it was like this. Okay, this is another reason why you don't take your chisel and cut a line, cut an edge in it, because I would have had a big hard line to get rid of. Instead, I went in with a 9-point. And I just worked it down. I never cut that away and defined it, okay? I left it like this. And so all I had to do was capture the very bottom of this transition from horizontal to vertical. And now I've got all this material. Now, as I said, you can make a curve. I mean, that point right there, a 1/4 inch over, I got, you know, a lot more height. I'll just tweak that over a little bit. Make this taller so I got more volume, because it's going to look better. you know, this is going to end the world if I move that point just a tiny bit. That's a great reference point. It works perfect. But if I do this here and just change that fold a little bit, I don't think most people are going to know the difference. I'll see how it looks because I'll start working it in from up top here. I don't want to take too much off until I get this cuff off, okay? So, but I want this to be really, really nice, okay? So that's where we're at. All right, take this camera back up and cut some more stuff. Okay. Before anybody says anything, when I did that, I used the corner of my chisel to erode this down. Okay? You've been paying attention. I've told you not to use the corners of your tools to cut stone. What I'm trying to explain to you when I say that, what I mean when I say that, is you're not supposed to take the corner of your chisel and lay it in there and dig and dig and dig and dig and dig to open it up. You're supposed to use the rugged part, the crown, the middle, the whole face of the chisel. When I'm using the corner of my chisel, whatever chisel I'm using, I'm doing it in a very gentle way just to try to establish a line in there. And the goal with this is that it's going to create a channel that's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. The problem is that everybody that starts, you look at their chisels, and they'll have multiple chisels, and all the corners are blown off. Because they take, instead of cutting like this, they go like this and try to evacuate large amounts of stone. You're not supposed to do that. That's not what the tool's made for, okay? You can use the tool any way you want, but using the corner to take off heavy stone is not the point. Using it to open this up, I am using the corner of the chisel, okay? So, and you'll notice I got all these chisels. How many corners have I blown off since I started carving this stone? Have you seen any? I haven't hidden any. I've had some chips, just around the blade. But I haven't lost a single corner off of any tool since I started this whole job. Okay, how many videos ago was that? Okay, don't abuse your chisel. All right, now you should be able to see. Got a pretty nice line right here. Okay, you see it falls down here. It's got a little bit of transition, and I can tune that up as I go. But now we've got to develop the split off of that. That is roughly like that. Okay. And so we'll do this. I'll tip this over here. I'll do the same thing, and I'll start it with, I went in with my small round chisel, okay, just to open it up a little bit, beside it, so that this was lower. And then that gave me a place where I had a little bit of a flat to just start a break. And you can do it all with a regular chisel, you just got to be careful. It digs easier. With a bush chisel, it sits on top and rides on the surface a little bit better. So we'll do that and then see how this looks. Okay, same thing. I got my second fold indicated, established, whatever. The reason I did that, somewhat like the reason I did this, okay? In order to have the greatest amount of volume here, I can't carve it, per se. I can't just lay into it and carve it and do a whole bunch of carving on it, because it'll make it smaller. But this detail beside it is lower. This detail beside it is higher. So if I can evacuate that, I've got some height there, I can leave that alone. Now I can work on this fold, carve this fold that's just barely subordinate, just barely back behind it. And by doing that, I'll open this up, and this will pop and be tall. I can work on my contours to make sure my transition's just right as these two come together, because there's going to be some tension where they split. They're not going to be a straight line. It's going to tend to pull because you got another anchor, okay? And so I can develop these together in unison. And then at the end, I can bend this line, clear this off in order to pick this up and have this drapery come up in here to have this fold come and fall down over knee. And all it's going to make it taller, okay? Like I said, this is hard to understand on your first job. And I said, you know, you can't just carve a big fancy angel all at once your first time out. It is a lot to understand with doing this, okay? And this is basic drapery. Learn this on doing basic work, and then you move into bigger fancy stuff, okay? Because this technique of carving around something that's there, working around something that's there in order to bring it forward, in order to make less visual noise, in order to put the composition together, all these things. It all goes back to that low spot when you're cutting a panel and you're axing it and you got a low spot. And you got to leave that low spot alone and understand you got to work everything around it to bring that low spot up. Okay? It's the same thing right here. Same thing. Okay? That's why you learn to do the basic stuff first. All right? Cut some more stuff. As you do this, go slow. I took my round chisel, my small one, and I evacuated inside here a little bit more. Then I'm taking my small bush chisel, or you could use a scraper, just because a wider scraper is less likely to dig than a regular chisel. And I'm rounding everything off, including this edge. So I keep this edge before I cut it deep and it can chip big. I round it over while it's still really supported. It's not very proud. I'm going to do the same thing here right now, just so that edge is starting to come together before I go deep with it, and then it'll hold that. You'll have a better edge. Point where your fold diverges, sometimes the fold will be subdued, it'll be underneath. Sometimes you'll have a line over it, one side or the other. Or sometimes some guys have even taken take and drill it just a little bit, a really tiny drill, and then take a point, just make a nice point. We'll do more of that towards the end when I have everything really well established, because I'll have to go over all of it and define all of these intersections all over the stone, and that will really make it pop to have those little black points of absolute darkness. That difference in value really makes the rest of it stand out. And you won't notice it as much in studio because you've got pretty strong shadow in studio with your incandescent light, with the light you got in studio. When you put it out in the real world, that sun's going to kick your butt, and it's going to show all the things that you didn't define. And so those definitions, those little spots you put in, really start to matter. Okay. Well, I think that's probably going to wrap this video up. It's long enough now, so we'll give it a shot. My name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor here at Carolina Sculpture Studio with a Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.